Welcome to Theory of Music, Grade 1, Lesson 5 with Franz Devantier. In this lesson, we will be looking at accidentals. In order to understand accidentals, you need to understand what a semitone, tone, sharp, flat, and natural are. Let us start by looking at the keyboard. Now, in the picture of the keyboard below, it's just the very essential notes. You'll notice that there's 2 black notes grouped together and 3 black notes grouped together. And these groupings of 2 and 3 black notes together go throughout the keyboard. It's 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, and so on. The black notes are always in groups of 2s and 3s. And in between the groups of 2s and 3s, you will find 2 white notes with no black note between them. For example, if you look at the picture below, you see E and F. There's 2 white notes that are together, but there's no black note in between them. And you can't see it that nicely here, but between B and C, there's also no black note in between them. So it's 2 notes and then 2 white notes with no black note in between, 3 black notes and 2 white notes with no black note in between, 2 black notes and then 2 white notes with no black note in between, and so on. So it is this pattern of 2, 3, 2, 3. To find middle C on the piano keyboard, find a group of 2 black notes near the middle of the keyboard. The white note on the left of the group is middle C. A semitone or half tone is the smallest distance between 2 notes on the keyboard. It can be between a white and a black note, or for that matter, a black and a white note, and it could be between certain white notes, for example, between E and F and B and C. Let's look at other semitones. So the black notes between C and D, there's a black note there, and I've just called it C sharp. So if you go C to C sharp is a semitone. And then if you go C sharp and you go 1 semitone higher, you get to D. And there also you can see if you go from E to F, that is also a semitone. Now let's look at a tone. A tone consists of 2 semitones. You count the distance of 1 semitone, then you count the distance of another semitone, and you have a tone. So let's have a look at that. If you look at the keyboard again, if you look on the left-hand side, we go all the way down to C. And if we went from C up to C sharp, is a semitone. And if we then went from C sharp to D, is another semitone. And therefore, C to D is a tone. In a similar sort of way, if we went from C sharp, which is a black note, and we went to the next highest note, which is D, that would be a semitone. And then if you went from D to D sharp, which is the black note between D and E, that would also be a semitone. So a semitone and a semitone makes a tone. So therefore, between C sharp and D sharp is a tone. In the same way, we can find a tone between E and F sharp, because from E to F is a semitone, and then from F to F sharp is also a semitone. So that's 2 semitones between E and F sharp. Therefore, E to F sharp is a tone. A tone can be between 2 white notes. For example, C to D. It can be between 2 black notes, for example, C sharp to D sharp. It can be between a white note and a black note, for example, E to F sharp, or the other way around. It could be, for example, from A sharp to C would also be a tone. A tone is also known as a whole tone. So you get a whole tone and a half tone, also known as a tone and a semitone. So semitone, half tone are interchangeable, and tone, whole tone are also interchangeable. How would a semitone or a half tone look on a guitar fretboard? Now, when we look at the guitar fretboard, we must imagine if you're playing the guitar, you've got the guitar on your lap, the fingerboard or the fretboard is pointing away from you. But in order to look at this fretboard, we turn it around 180 degrees. We spin it around on the neck, and therefore the low note or the low string is now at the bottom and the high string is at the top. So it's just switched around from, if we turn it 180 degrees back, we swivel it back so we can play it. It's the other way around, but we swivel it towards us so we can see the frets, and then the low note is at the bottom. On the guitar, a semitone is a distance from any fret to its nearest fret. And of course, we should add on the same string, because if you go to different strings, then you no longer have a semitone, you have something else. So for example, if you go from just behind the first fret to just behind the second fret, that is a semitone. If you go from behind the second fret to behind the third fret, that is a semitone. And if you went from behind the third fret to behind the fourth fret, that would also be a semitone. Now your fingers on the guitar fretboard or fingerboard are always placed as close to the frets as possible. Now, how would a tone or a whole tone look on a guitar fretboard? On the guitar, a tone is the distance from a fret to the second fret away on the same string. And this principle applies to all 6 strings. So if you look at the picture below, we see that on the 6th string or the low string, if we went from behind the first fret all the way to behind the third fret, we would have a tone. And if you look at that, if we went from the first fret to the second fret, we would have a half tone or a semitone. And then if we went from the second fret to behind the third fret, we'd have another semitone. A semitone and a semitone makes a whole tone or a tone. So a tone, but from the behind the first fret to behind the third fret is a tone. Likewise, if we went from behind the third fret to behind the 5th fret, we'd also have a tone. On the D string, for example, you could go from behind the 2nd fret to behind the 4th fret, and that would also be a tone. How would you play middle C on the guitar? Okay, so that is easy. The 5th string or the A string behind the 3rd fret. So we're counting the strings from the top in this case because the fretboard is switched around. So the 5th string is the 2nd string from the bottom. And if you look to the left, you'll see that is an A string. And we put the finger close to behind the 3rd fret. And that would create a middle C. And if you look how that is written in the treble clef, you'll see it's written as a middle C in the treble clef. But remember from our previous lessons, where I told you that the guitar sounds an octave lower than it is written. So middle C would be written like that on the guitar, but it would actually sound an octave lower. Let us look at sharps. We can describe all of the black notes, all 5 of them, because they've got 5. And when you get to the next set of 5, it's a duplication of the first set of 5. So all the sharps on the keyboard would be, if we started from middle C and we just went to the first sharp, C sharp, D sharp, and then we skip a little bit and we go F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then of course we'd skip a little bit again and we'd carry on with C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. See, they just keep repeating. So we can describe all the black notes with those 5 sharps. And then we get the 12 tones on the keyboard. And if you count with me, we'll count from C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. And if you were counting, you would have got to 12. Now, if we go to the 13th note or the 13th tone, we get back to C, which is then just an octave above. So the whole 12 tones will then just repeat again. So there's 12 tones on the keyboard, and for each tone we can play a different scale. So there's 12 scales on the keyboard. And by the way, you can play exactly the same scales on the guitar, you just play them in a slightly different way. Where are the flats? Because there are no more notes left. Okay, so we've used up all the notes, and now where are we going to put the flats? So there is a simple way to answer that. Each of the 5 black notes have 2 names. In other words, they have enharmonic names. It's 2 names for the same note. So for example, you see the first note on the left-hand side would be C sharp, because it's a semitone up from C, but it could also be called D flat because it's a semitone down, in other words, going to the left from D. And then D sharp is a semitone up from D, but it could also be called E flat because it's a semitone down from E. And then if you go to F, F sharp is a semitone up from F, but then if you go to G, a semitone down from G would be G flat. You see it's the same note, a different name. And if we went to G and we went a semitone up, we could go to G sharp. But if we were on the note A and we went a semitone down, we could go to A flat. It's the same note as G sharp. And if we were standing on A, we could go to A sharp, which is a semitone up. But if you started off on the note B and you went down a semitone, you'd get to B flat. So there are enharmonic notes, different names for the same notes. If you are ascending, use the sharp names. So for example, let's say we start from C and we're going to do all of the 12 tones, working our way all the way up to B. Then we would say C, C sharp because we're going up, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. And then up to C, which would then be an octave higher. If you are descending or going down or to the left on the piano keyboard, then you would use the flat names. So you'd start with the note that's to the right of the little keyboard that I've written, C, and then you'd move onto the keyboard B, semitone down, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, E, E flat, D, D flat, C. Does that make sense? You ask me, is there no E sharp or an F flat? Then the answer to that is yes, there is. So E sharp is exactly the same note as F. And so if we were going up, we could go D, D sharp, E, E sharp instead of F, which would be the same note as F. That's an enharmonic change. F flat would be exactly the same note as E. So if we came down G, G flat, F, and we went F flat, we'd actually be doing E, which is an enharmonic change. So those are enharmonic changes. So we do have an E sharp because it's an F, and we do have an F flat because that's actually E. But what about B sharp and C flat, you might ask me? Well, B sharp is the same note as C, because if you go a semitone up from B, we get to C. So B sharp is the same as C. And C flat is the same note as B, because if you were on C and you went a semitone down, you would actually get to B, because there isn't a black note between B and C. Again, an enharmonic change, which is a different name for the same note. You may ask, which notes are the naturals then? Well, a natural works a little bit differently. A natural cancels a previously defined sharp. A natural cancels a previously defined flat. So in other words, if a natural cancels a sharp, it will bring the note down. Like if it was F sharp, it would become F, so the note would be coming down. But if it cancelled a flat, the note would be coming up, because if you had, for example, E flat, and the natural cancelled that flat, it would be moving up to E. So a natural removes the value of one sharp, or it removes the value of one flat towards its original value. Originally it was a E, now it's E flat, so the natural brings it back to E. If the original note was F and it became F sharp, the natural would bring it back to F again. Let us say that you have a B flat, and now we've gone back to the notation which we learnt in previous lessons. B flat, the third line on the treble clef staff, and it's got the flat sign in front of it, which looks like a funny B. That is B flat. A natural would return the value to the note B. In other words, it would go one semitone up to B. So B and B natural are also the same way of saying the same note. Now I want you to look at that natural sign. It almost looks like the pound sign, which is used for the sharp, except it's missing the upper arm on the right hand side and the lower arm on the left hand side. But it looks almost like the pound, but just a little bit different. A few less lines in it. Let us say that you have a F sharp, which is the black key between F and G. And if you look at the diagram below, you can see that's how F sharp is written. There's the F with the pound sign in front of it, or the sharp sign, F sharp. A natural would return the value to the note F. F and F natural are the same note. And there again, you can see how the F natural looks in the diagram below. Let us say that you have F double sharp. Now you might say to me, now what is F double sharp? Well, double sharp is if you have the note F and you have a sharp and another sharp as well in front of it. So what would happen? The first sharp would make that F become F sharp, and the second sharp would make that F become G. So F sharp, if you sharp that, it would become G. So we have a symbol for a double sharp. It looks like a little X about the height of the note. We put the X in front of the note, and that means double sharp. So F double sharp, which is actually the note G, there's an enharmonic change for you. Now the natural would return the value to F sharp, because the natural only returns the value of 1 sharp. So if you look at the diagram below, you would see there's a natural and a sharp for F. So it's F natural sharp, which is actually F sharp. If you wanted to get back to F, you would have to use 2 natural signs. So there's a natural sign, and where the sharp sign is, you'd have to replace that with another natural sign, and then that would be F. Let us say that you have B double flat, which is the same note as the note A, because if you went from B and you went to B flat, that's the black note between B down to A. It's a black note in between is B flat. And if you flatten the B flat, it would go a semitone down to the A. So therefore, B double flat is the same as A. A natural would return the value to B flat. So if you look how that's written, it's natural, the B flat with the B. So that is on the black note between A and B, B natural flat, or B flat. It's the same note as B flat. Now, if you wanted to return the value to B, then you'd have to have 2 natural signs to bring it all the way back to B. So a natural sign takes just 1 flat or 1 F at a time. An enharmonic change means 2 names for the same note. So let's just look at some examples. On the top left, we have C double sharp is the same note as D. You see on the left, C double sharp, that's C with the X sign, which means double sharp. So if you took a C and you made it a sharp, it would be the black note between C and D. And if you made that a sharp, it would go and become a D. B double flat is the same note as the A, because between A and B is a black note called B flat. But if we were to flatten B flat, it would become A. C flat is the same note as B, because there's no black note between B and C. So if you made C flat, made C into a flat, it will move down a semitone, and it would in actual fact be the same as B. F flat would be the same note as E, because between E and F there's no black note. So if you went to F and you took it down a semitone, by making it flat, it would go down to E. So F flat's the same note as E. I want you to see how many enharmonic changes you can find, how many notes you can find that are different names for the same notes, or 2 names for the same notes. Thank you for joining me for Grade 1, Lesson 5 of Theory of Music. In this lesson, we have covered accidentals and established the meaning of semitone, tone, sharp, flat, natural, and an enharmonic change. We have explained music theory as relevant to the guitar, as well as to the traditional keyboard methods. In Lesson 6, we will introduce scales. See you in Lesson 6.